Well, welcome everybody to this session. My name's Laura Overton and I head up towards maturity. If you've not heard of us, then we're a benchmarking organization and our role is to really make sure that you've got independent data in your hands that help you make smart decisions about learning strategy in the future. And what we want to do in this next half hour is to be thinking about the future of learning and our role within it, because I know, having worked in this industry for 30 years or so, that actually innovation is driven by passionate people, people who love what they're doing and believe we can make a difference. But I think what's really interesting over the last few years is just the pace of change that we're facing. The businesses and organizations that we're working with at the moment, whether we're a charity, not-for-profit, private sector, large or small, we're getting under global pressure. We're under a very fast, digital, fluid, dynamic kind of work environment that we're having to serve. And we're also having to serve individuals in that work environment who are much more curious, much more connected, and probably more tech savvy than we give them credit for, particularly with all the smart devices and the mobile devices that they're booking their holidays and doing their banking on. So the world of work is changing, the world of us as individuals, that's changing as well. But to what extent has learning and development changed? To what extent are we keeping up with the individuals and organizations that we're supporting? And really, I think the thing that we need to be focused on now, and you've heard all of the speakers today, you've heard everyone who's been talking about change, about doing things differently, about new technologies. But actually, when it comes down to it, as learning professionals today, we have to be able to take these tools and offer a more integrated, customer-centric and digital service. And we need to be able to respond quickly to change. And as a result of that, I think we need to be a little bit fitter than we were before. The things that we used to do, that we used to be successful in an older, slower environment, don't cut it anymore when it comes down to delivering change now. And in a research report that we did recently with the CIPD, we actually looked at whether or not learning and development is fit for the future of learning. Now, just before we go any further, these slides, these reports, everything I'm talking about today, I'm going to make available to you at the end of the session. I'm going to give you an email address that you can just email, and before you walk out of the room, everything you see will be there. So don't feel you have to scribble violently. Just wait till the end and you'll be able to get everything. But this new report does show that we're probably not quite as integrated with the world of learning and work as we thought we were. We're also not necessarily as connected with our customers, the people who work in our organization, the extended enterprise that we support through learning and development as well. And in fact, only 1 in 3 of us actually believe that we know how our staff actually learn what we need to do our jobs. Are we thinking digitally? Well, we are certainly allocating a certain amount of money to digital learning technologies, but we're not necessarily shifting that year on year. And in fact, about 1/5 of our budget goes towards applying digital solutions. And are we as learning and development professionals equipped for change? Well, you can actually see here that we have a lot of skills that we believe that we need, but only 1 in 4 of us actually don't even know how we're building those skills. So overall, the picture, there's an opportunistic opportunity for us, but at the same time, we still have a little bit of way to go. I think what hasn't dulled is our passion for change. And we've seen through our benchmark studies over the years that as learning professionals, we don't just want to deliver more for less. We actually want to improve processes, individual productivity. We want to improve agility of the organization and really make a difference in the culture of learning in that organization as well. So our desire, our vision for the future of learning is strong. It's healthy. We want a lot. The trouble is that we're actually not necessarily delivering that. So whilst 9 out of 10 of us want to see change happen in our business, we're finding it slightly easier to deliver efficiency right now. But actually, when it comes down to the stuff that matters about helping our organization learn how to learn, there's still a way to go. Now, the work that we do is about benchmarking, and it's about saying, well, how can we improve the results that we're delivering? Not how can we use more technology or save more money, but actually how can we improve productivity? And the benchmark service that we provide is almost like a fitness tracker for learning and development. We can consider how we're doing in learning and development, and we measure our strategy and our inputs and our tactics using something called the Towards Maturity Index. But what we find is that those who are at the top 10% of that index are 3 times as likely than those in the bottom quartile to be delivering efficiencies or improvements in individual productivity. 5 times as likely to be delivering improvements in responsiveness, and 8 times as likely to be able to say we're making a change in learning culture. You can see from the numbers here, they're not perfect, they're not achieving everything all the time, but their fitness level in terms of how they are changing, how they're adapting, how they're appropriately working in organizations, has probably got something for us all to learn from. Now, I'm not saying all of us are going to become amazing athletes overnight. And benchmarking isn't about how do I get into the top 10%, but it's all about how do I take the next step that's right for me. So what I wanted to do was to share with you 9 things that we've learned from these top deck organizations that you can take away and be thinking about, okay, is that the one step that I can take? Choosing the right thing. It's like any fitness program. You don't do everything all at once, but it's choosing the right thing for you and where you are at this point in time. Well, the first thing that these top deck organizations teach us is that they do have established incredibly clear goals. They're very focused, not just on how do I deliver more courses for less money, but what is it that I need to achieve with each individual program. And in fact, almost all of them, 80% of them, sit down in collaboration with the business leaders up front and say, okay, well, what are we trying to change here? On average, it's only about 31% of us who actually have that conversation with business. And I know that that's a tough conversation. So what we've been doing is recently, and when it's a report that's just come out this week called Making an Impact, we've been looking at the difference between how do these organizations make an impact. And when we analyze these 31% who actually on average sit down and talk with people up front, we actually found that they were also much more likely to report results. They were more likely to have engagement with line managers throughout the learning process to support the application of learning. They were more likely that those line managers are willing to give them evidence that says this is how behavior has changed in my organization. So establishing those goals early and upfront really, really makes a difference. You're in it together. We're not doing something for the business, but we're doing something with the business. The second thing that these top deck organizations do is that they indulge, and it's not an indulge, it's becoming a necessity actually, in fresh thinking about the way that they do their job. And that's really critical in this day and age, in that what used to be successful for us might not be successful in the next project. And we have to be willing to be able to lay down some of our past experiences and listen to the organization and to our customers in that organization. So it's very clear that they've got a different perspective on how they need to go about their job. And in fact, pretty much all of them consider the course as only one option that they have available to them to build performance in that organization. And that's absolutely essential for us these days because we're learning differently, we're learning more rapidly, and we have to be aware of all of the different things that are going on around us to be able to choose the right thing for the right situation. They're looking at models that allow us to integrate learning more effectively back into the workplace. Models like 70-20-10. It's not about the numbers. If you want to have a look at some more independent research, we've got a whole heap of research for you. But it's about the balance. How do we balance experience with social learning and connections with the formal learning? And how do we get that right, the right thing at the right time? And these organizations are embracing that much more than the rest of us. The other thing that they're really strong at is that they understand the environment, the terrain in which they're providing their services. By that, I mean they're thinking carefully about who their customers are, the context in which those customers are working. Because we recognize that actually there is so much choice that's available to our learners, to our workers, to the people in our organization that we're serving. We can go out as individuals and get learning anywhere we like. We won't call it learning, but we wake up in the middle of the night, we've got a problem, we've got a smartphone, we'll Google it, we'll find a solution. It's something that's becoming much more natural to all of us. And what we find is those top organizations are really in that zone. They're thinking not about, is that learner coming to my course? Will they engage with my compliance training? But they're thinking about them as customers, and they're proactive in going out and understanding how their staff learn what they need to do their job. We do a whole series of work in our learning landscape work. If you want to talk to us about that, we can do that. But we go out and we say to people, how do you learn what you need to do your job? Where do you go? What are you doing? Are you connected? Are you using mobile? Who do you talk to? What works for you? And when that comes back, that really gives you a strong sense of the terrain in your organization that you can actually start to be thinking about fresh thinking and learning. When we do go out to staff out in the business, one of the questions that we ask them after clearly showing them that online learning isn't just a compliance course they've just been through, but it's much broader, it's much wider, it's about our connections. And we say to them, why is it that you're motivated to do this? It's clear that you're doing certain things on your own. Almost all of them, and if you're coming to my next session in the conference next door, almost all of them are saying, actually, I just want to do my job faster and better. And the top learning organizations know that. I mean, how many of us can sit and look at the programs that we're doing, the initiatives and the things that we're doing, and say, does this really help my staff members do their job better and faster? This is quite a salutary question to ask of the initiatives and service that you're providing. But these top organizations, they listen to their learners. They get them involved. They want to know, how can we help you? And it doesn't have to be, how can we provide you with a course? So they're using their staff to help them identify the most appropriate solution for them. And again, with the resources we're going to send you later, there's different case studies that you can dig into to actually see how that matters. The other thing is that they understand the terrain, they understand their learners, they're thinking practically up front with the business about what are we trying to solve here. But then they actually have an understanding of what's the right kit to use. What are the sorts of technologies and services? They're not forcing everything into a social learning strategy or a 70-20-10 strategy or a mobile learning strategy, but they are very much more digitally minded. They allocate more of their budgets to learning technologies. They enable more of their formal learning. They're bringing technology into that mix, into that blend. They're thinking less about initiatives and more about how do we support the ongoing learning process. And they're not scared of the IT department. The IT department isn't the person who's there to say no, no, no. The IT department is someone that they go to and say, well, what's going on? What's happening? How can we use that new thing that's coming out in the company to support the way that the individuals learn and progress? They're also not scared about making stuff easier for their learners, simplifying the whole process. They tackle the barriers on behalf of their staff. They tackle the barriers to community. They recognize that most of us learn from learning with each other. So they use communities of practice, learning communities, not just setting them up and hoping someone will go, but going to where those people are already. They simplify access to content. They're more likely to be using things like micro content, short, sharp pieces of content, using video, using online books, thinking about the way that they provide content easily through the technologies that people actually use in the places that they actually use them. They simplify it by also making it clear about what they've done. Did you know that actually only 44% of us have any kind of clear communication strategy about what we're doing? So we're putting all of this effort, all of this time into creating amazing solutions, and they're not telling anyone where they are, how to get hold of them. We're just kind of assuming that something is going to cascade down into the organization. Not for these guys. These guys are proactive in having a communications campaign that clearly labels how people can simply get to what they need at the right place and the right time. The other thing that they teach us as well is that actually success in learning, success in achieving a learning culture, achieving more business agility, achieving some of the things that we're talking about here today, is actually not all on their shoulders. When you have a look at the Making an Impact report, it really stunned us when we looked at the data in a new way and saw that those learning professionals who sat down up front with those learning and development, with the business leaders to say, what are we going to do here together, actually achieved so much more directly with them. So some of the things that we were talking about before, we had to have a few graphs in here. We're a research company. I need to prove to you that we do research as well as having pretty pictures up here. But you can see there that the managers are providing active support of learning in the workplace, that they're helping them define the competencies that's needed in those individuals, that they're providing information on the application of learning, and they're communicating back to those learning professionals as well. So it's really clear that it is absolutely a team effort. The other thing which I haven't got here is that they equip line managers not to become extensions of the training or learning department, but equip them to help their staff when their staff are going through programs, giving them things like toolkits to use in their team meetings to connect and engage with people. They also equip their learners. They help their staff learn how to learn. And I think this is probably a really significant factor in the fact that they are so much more likely to report a shift in the learning culture. It's not that they've just pushed out more stuff in more places on more devices in smaller and smaller bite-sized pieces, but they're helping people learn how to use that. How do we use communities? How do we search better? How do we think about when we're going to use content? How do we think about reflecting on what we've done in order to work out loud in some of those processes? Encouraging them to have personal learning strategies. Encouraging themselves to have personal learning strategies too. Because one of the things that they do as well is that they train hard. They recognize that there are a lot of new skills that we need in an organization of learning and development that needs to be fit for the future. Skills like performance consulting, we hear about that here. Skills like program evaluation, data analytics, skills like facilitating social. The black circle shows the number of learning and development professionals who believe that they need those skills in their organization today. The inner circle are the skills we believe that we have in our teams at the moment. So there's quite a big gap. The top performing learning organizations, they're not perfect by any means. But some of the things that we've been talking about are so prevalent in a conference like this, they are twice as likely to have those skills, that confidence built up already in their teams right here, right now. So that's a kind of critical element of these top performing organizations. They know where they're going. I haven't put it in this slide, but the other thing about the top learning organizations is their connections with the wider ecosystem. Because if they haven't got the skills in place, we've already seen their relationships with the IT department, knowing when to bring that in. They work better with their providers and suppliers to bring skills in from there. They know when to buy and when to build those skills that they need. They're working with their marketing department for communications. So it's a much broader, they're not in an isolated area. They're really connecting out much wider. And I think one of the things that's a real struggle for us, I've shared this slide with us before, but there's a real tendency within learning and development, particularly coming to an amazing conference like this. It's great to chat with people, it's great to get that connection and engagement, but we're really prone to a great fad or two. We love a bit of mobile learning. We love a new model. We think that those things are actually going to be the quick fix for us moving forward. And actually, through the work we've been doing in Towards Maturity, we've been investigating. Trust me, these quick fixes and fads haven't just popped up overnight. I'm 30 years in the industry. They have been going every 6 months. There's something new. There's something fresh. So in 2003, when we started our research, we were on to the fad. We wanted to try and work out what is it that works, actually works, rather than what is it that we love to chat about because it might work and this might be the thing that saves all of our careers in the future. Unfortunately, I can have to tell you that actually, so far, we've been tracking all the technologies. We've been deconstructing all of the different models that have been coming through. 70-20-10, we've been deconstructing the behaviors behind that for a number of years now. And actually, it's not the particular model or tool or technology, but using a common sense framework. It's a framework that allows us to apply business thinking to learning strategy. So when people go through our benchmark, they're not kind of saying, are you doing 70-20-10? If so, what are you doing? But we're saying, looking at the whole range of tactics, how do we connect? How do we align? How do we think about our learners? How do we think about the wider work context, the capability of the learning and development team? How do we think about change management, learning design? How do we think about the way that we articulate our value and our worth back into the organization? These are not sexy things. They are not things that are going to make the front cover of Inside Learning Technology. But they are things that help us to track the fitness of organizations, because consistently, the more active organizations are in the mundane, it's basically, stick to a decent diet, do a bit of exercise, the fitter they are in order to deliver those solutions. And in black and white, it is about applying business strategy to learning thinking. About prioritizing what's important, outputs, not inputs, the customer orientation, our ability to be prepared for change as well. So again, it's not necessarily that sexy, but it's stuff consistently, time after time, that works. And those top organizations, and I'm coming up to the last couple of hints and tips for you here. The top organizations are also strong on keeping on track. They are doing more of these common sense things, but they are using things like data analytics. They're using evidence to help them make smart decisions rather than knee-jerk decisions. Everything else has failed. Why don't I just try this? So they are looking at evidence outside of their organization and also inside their organization. So, for example, they're 3 times as likely to be using things like benchmarking as a performance improvement tool. They're 3 or 4 times as likely to be looking at learning analytics, the way that data and metrics within their organization can be gathered and used to inform how their strategy should shift and change moving forward. So they're not all mathematicians, they're not all data analysts, but they're absolutely clear on the fact that they need independent evidence to help them make sound decisions about the future of learning. And they are using benchmarking. Now, benchmarking is a performance improvement tool that's been around since the 1990s, when Xerox introduced it to improve the way that they service their customers. And benchmarking is it's all about action. What are we doing? What are the top performing organizations in our business doing? And when I've got that comparison, what action do I need to take? I think one of the things that learning and development we're struggling with is that when we think about benchmarking, typically we say, I'm going to get benchmark. I'm going to think, how much budget have I got? How many people are in my team? How many hours of training per person? We're thinking all the time about inputs. We're thinking about costs. And when we start comparing, your budget's bigger than my budget, your team's bigger than my team, it has two outcomes. Either complacency, I've got a great big budget and I've got a great big team, and therefore I must be better, I must be doing well, or it actually implies that I can't do well because I haven't got a big budget and a big team. I can tell you right now, top-date learning organizations have got on average a smaller training budget and a smaller team. It's just that they're smarter in using what they've got. And when we stick to old-style benchmarks, the challenge we have is that we are reconfirming the fact that we are a cost center. And when we are reconfirming the fact we're a cost center, the business looks at us and thinks, oh, I wonder how much cost we can save from this cost center. So we want to kind of say to you that actually benchmarking is more, we need to be thinking about it as a performance improvement tool. When we start to look at some of those business indicators that we were talking about earlier, productivity, cultural change, agility of an organization, employee engagement, some of those bigger, wider issues, then when we start to look at those, who's achieving those in a more likely way, it allows us to personally understand both our strengths and our weaknesses. When we understand our strengths and our weaknesses, we can take smart decisions about what action we need to make in order to improve it. That's why benchmarking is an performance improvement tool. And what we're doing over the next few weeks, in conjunction with many of the organizations around here, is that we give you the opportunity to establish your baseline, find out where you are now, and to be able to move forward. Now, the 9th tip I want to share with you is the fact that these organizations are not organizations who sit around and talk about all the new things that ought to be done. They don't get dressed up and then sit on the sofa with a tub of ice cream and expect to get fitter. They're taking action all the time. And one of the things that concerns me when I look at the data on a year-on-year basis is that on average, our aspirations are higher, but actually our actions in some of these areas we've been talking about are static. When I look at the top performers year on year, they are more proactive in these areas year on year. They're more likely to communicate, but they're even more likely to have upped their communication the next year. They're more likely to have conversations with business, but the next year they're having even more conversations. Success breeds success. So they're active and they're making it happen. So here are the 9 tips that I really want to share with you. Clearly, it's a lot more sophisticated than this. You need to kind of work through what's going to be the most appropriate action to take. But I recommend, if you don't do anything else today, that you choose one of these areas and say, okay, well, what am I going to do with the rest of this conference to take something back to make it happen in one of those areas? And we'd like to certainly invite you to help you to see from the data which of these areas will help you to make better decisions. So we'd like to invite you to actually join over 4,500 learning professionals who've been using the benchmark over the last number of years in countries from all around the globe to actually spend some time. Now, getting fit is not easy. So whilst we can offer this service to you completely confidentially, completely independently, completely for free, it takes an effort. Because what we're saying to you as learning professionals, why don't you sit down and allocate an hour of your time to reflect through on your strategy and your tactics right now? And an hour seems like a big investment, but it's basically the equivalent of drinking a little bit more water or going to the gym just for half an hour once a week. Just invest that hour of your time, reflect on your strategy. And what we will do is we will send you back a 21-page report that shows you your strengths, your weaknesses, where you can go, and that will come and be with you in September. Now, this is just what a few people have actually said about the benchmark this year. These organizations, they're not the top deck organizations, that they're organizations facing change. And just reflecting on some of the tactics, the strategies, just answering the questions will help you be more equipped for change in your business. And we want to be able to offer this for free, and we do that thanks to our amazing ambassadors. If you look around, you're going to be seeing these signs everywhere. And we don't share your data with the ambassadors, it's confidential, but they make sure that we can provide you with that free independent service. So ambassadors, if you're listening, a massive thank you. I've rattled through today. I'm hoping I've given you some practical ideas. What I'd like to do is to offer you these slides so that you can share them back in your organization, take them back into your team meetings, discuss them. If you email, all you need to do is send a blank email to this email address, and you will get back links to these slides. You'll get back links to the slides I'm going to be doing in 10 minutes in the next room on demonstrating value. There'll be the reports that I've been talking about that you can download for free. So there's a lot of different resources there. This is only going to be up for the next 24 hours, so I'd recommend that you actually send that email now. If you want to talk to us, we're at booth number 27 in the corner. We'd love to chat with you. I'm sorry it's kind of not more interactive, but it's a wee bit noisy in these environments, but we love to talk normally. We love to connect and interact. So join us on Twitter, send the emails. If you need extra information, Jenny's got something here. Thank you so much for listening, and please make it happen. Tell us what you're doing, share your stories, get involved, and this is an exciting time to be a learning and development professional. Thank you so much.